Hello, everybody. Imagine a land in Africa stretching between the deep blue Atlantic Ocean and vast oil-rich plains. Beyond its long coastlines and dense tropical forests, Angola stands quietly, harboring stories of wealth, war, and now a spiritual awakening that's shocking the world. This is Angola, a country once barely mentioned in global conversations, now slowly capturing the world's attention. Not just because of its oil, not just because of its diamonds, but because of the wave of spiritual transformation happening far from the media spotlight. But before we dive in, let's first meet the old face of Angola. Angola is no small country. Its territory is vast, nearly twice the size of Germany. But more than half of its people lived under the shadow of a brutal civil war that raged for over 25 years, since independence from Portugal in 1975. Tens of thousands of lives were lost. A generation grew up in fear. The economy lay in ruins. And religion, it became a small, almost forgotten part amid the fires of conflict and power struggles. Yet, after the war ended in 2002, Angola was no longer the same. The nation rediscovered itself and began to rise. While the world looked elsewhere, Angola quietly built its wealth. Angola is an oil gold mine. Every day, millions of barrels of oil are pumped from deep underground and offshore oil fields. Money flows steadily into the capital, Luanda, once crowned one of the most expensive cities in the world for expats. Skyscrapers shoot up, luxury cars cruise the streets, five-star hotels stand side by side with shanty towns, a dazzling contrast. This is why Angola earned the nickname Africa's Kuwait, an oil-rich nation suddenly emerging as a new economic powerhouse in Africa. But there's one thing many don't talk about. Amid this worldly splendor, there is a void that money can't fill, a spiritual emptiness. It's ironic, as wealth increased, many Angolans felt increasingly lost. Social violence, economic inequality, and corruption spread. Many felt empty. They sought something that couldn't be bought or exchanged for barrels of oil. And here a new story begins. A light begins to glow, slowly but surely. In the corners of cities, in small villages, and among restless youth searching for meaning, the name Islam starts to be mentioned. A religion once barely heard of in Angola is now creeping into the hearts of those searching. One person embraces Islam, then two, then 10, then hundreds, now millions. What is really happening in Angola? Why are so many changing their faith? And how could a country once rumored to have closed mosques now become the site of Africa's most surprising Islamic revival? The year was 2013. The international community was shocked by a startling headline from Angola. Angolan government bans Islam and shuts down mosques. Sharp headlines erupted across major media outlets. From Africa to the Middle East, all eyes turned to a country previously barely talked about. Was it true? Could a 21st century nation really ban a religion practiced by over 1.8 billion people worldwide? At that time, Angola became the focus of global attention. The government hurriedly issued clarifications. They claimed never to have officially banned Islam. What actually happened, they said, was a regulation of unregistered religious organizations. But doubts had already spread. Simple mosques were dismantled. Religious activities were restricted. The small Muslim community, which had lived quietly until then, suddenly felt like a target. It must be acknowledged, at that time, Islam still sounded foreign in Angola. The religion was not part of the colonial history and lacked strong cultural roots, like in North or West Africa. The majority of Angolan population adhered to Roman Catholicism, a long legacy of over 400 years of Portuguese colonization. Even after independence, European cultural and religious influence remained strong. The Muslim community grew slowly. Many were immigrants from West African countries such as Senegal, Mali, Guinea, and Nigeria, coming to Angola for trade or work. They formed small communities, built modest mosques, and worshipped quietly. But when the issue of banning Islam surfaced, that sense of security was suddenly snatched away. Some mosques were closed. Permits to build places of worship became difficult to obtain. Converts began to fear openly showing their Islamic identity. This was the darkest chapter in Islam's journey in Angola. Despite pressures from above, the human heart cannot be controlled by decree. In fact, when their space was tightened, many Angolans began asking, why is Islam seen as a threat? What is this religion really about? These questions sparked curiosity. Quietly, some young people began to seek answers. They read digital versions of the Quran. They watched lectures on YouTube. They started learning about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Islam's messages of social justice, which to them sounded deeply relevant. Then, one by one, they embraced Islam. And from this moment, a new chapter began, one that no longer talks about bans, but rather about acceptance, growth, and love. Time passed. International pressure eased. The Angolan government, once seen as harsh on Islam, began to soften. A major reevaluation of religious policies took place. Mosques that had been demolished were replaced with permanent buildings. Muslim communities started applying for official recognition. Some religious leaders gained spaces in interfaith dialogues. Today, the Angolan government even recognizes Islam as part of the nation's religious pluralism, a change once thought impossible. What happened in Angola is not just a policy shift, it's a journey from fear to understanding, from suspicion to respect. Islam, once considered foreign, now grows as part of everyday life, on campuses, in markets, in schools, even within government centers. The Muslim population is rising fast, not due to coercion, not due to big campaigns, but because of hearts touched and minds opened. That's what Maria says, a former university student in Luanda and now one of the most active female preachers in the Angolan Muslim community. Stories like Maria's are not one or two, they number in thousands, even millions. The dark chapter of Islam in Angola has passed. Now the light that once nearly went out is beginning to shine again, slowly but surely. No one expected that in a country that once closed mosques, millions of Angolans have now embraced Islam. This spiritual journey isn't the result of massive campaigns or coercion, but of hearts feeling empty and finally finding peace in Islamic teachings. Converts come from all walks of life: urban youth, housewives, students, even former pastors. They say they found answers to life's questions that had long gone unanswered. Every week, mosques register hundreds of new names taking the Shahada. The Muslim community is growing rapidly, not just in Luanda, but in small towns and remote regions. This is no longer a silent movement. It's the greatest spiritual revival in modern Angolan history. Where dawah was once limited to face-to-face interactions, now Angolan youth wield digital media as their primary tool. Through YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, they spread peaceful, logical, and relatable Islamic messages. Islamic content in Portuguese is booming, reaching millions of local viewers. Young people hold online studies, open discussions, and even develop dawah apps and educational platforms. Many converts have become digital da'is and da'iyat, sharing their stories with friends and breaking negative stereotypes about Islam. They are not just recipients of guidance, they are also spreaders of light. Today, Islam is no longer a foreign religion in Angola. It is growing as part of the nation's new identity, a moral and social force bringing positive change. Challenges remain, such as limited worship spaces, lack of Islamic education access, and lingering stigma, but optimism burns bright in every corner of the Muslim community. Muslims are active in social activities, building schools, hospitals, and dawah centers. Some Muslim leaders are even engaged in national dialogues. Once a closed country, Angola is now opening up, and Islam, once suppressed, is now spoken of, studied, and loved. Angola is no longer known just as Africa's Kuwait, but as the land welcoming the light of Islam on the western edge of the dark continent.